Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to you at home. It's good to be here. The Torah portion that we are reading today, Parashat Naso, we're not going to read it in our synagogue, is the longest Torah portion of the Torah. Out of the 54 parashot, this is the longest, 176 verses. There are quite a few topics addressed in this parasha, and we don't have time to go through all of them. So I just picked a few topics that I'd like to talk about. The first one has to do with the tent of the meeting, the Ohel Moed. That's where the tabernacle was. So the Torah is listing the responsibilities certain peoples have in relation to that place, putting it together, taking it apart, transporting it, etc. I added up the numbers. 17,160 people, men, between the age of 30 and 50 were involved in this task. I think it's fair to say that it was not one of those pop-up tents that just kind of get into place in 2 minutes. The next topic that caught my attention is the Nazir, the monk. We Jews are not known for monk, but there's probably a very famous character in the Bible called Samson. That was a monk. And in fact, the Haftarah for this week, if we were to read it, has to do with all the circumstances leading up to the birth of Samson. I'm going to give you just a little tease so you can go home and read it if you want, or maybe at your seat. Samson's mother was barren, no children. An angel of God appears to her, and he tells her basically not to drink wine, etc., because she's going to get pregnant and the child in the womb is already a Nazir, a monk. She comes home, she tells her husband. We men are visual creatures. So the man says, hey, next time you see him, I want to see him too. I want to talk to him too. The angel appears again, and the mother is in the field. So she runs to the house, get the man, and then they have this conversation with him, and they see a miracle. Next topic that caught my attention has to do with the offerings that the 12 tribes brought to the dedication of the tabernacle, the Ohel Moed and the Aron HaKodesh and everything that was in that holy of place. Now, just so you understand, the tabernacle and the Ohel Moed were the center point of practice of Judaism for about 300 years until the first temple was built by King Solomon, at which time the tabernacle was moved to the temple. And for this dedication, which by the way is the same Torah portion we read during Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is all about the rededication of the temple, each of the tribe is bringing exactly the same offering. 35 different items, and the Torah repeats it every single time for every single tribe. 12 tribes repeats it, all 35 items. You know, the rabbis are saying that there are no unnecessary words or verses in the Torah. So why would the Torah repeat it? It's not my place to do it, although we Jews always have to ask questions. But I kind of added up the number. There are 72, in my humble opinion, unnecessary verses in the Torah. In that parasha. That's about 40% of the parasha. Nevertheless, as you can imagine, the rabbis discussed it, debated it, argued about it quite a bit. The explanation that makes the most sense to me has to do with joint offering and a shared goal. When each and every tribe of those 12 tribes is told to bring exactly the same thing, the message is nobody is special. Nobody is unique. We're all the same. You see, we started with Abraham and Sarah, the first Jews. And then there was Isaac and Rebekah, and then Jacob and Rachel and Leah. And then there were tribes that lived in Egypt for 400 plus years. On that day, at the dedication of the tabernacle and the Ohel Moed, the tent of the meeting, those 12 tribes became one nation, one people. Just like today. It doesn't matter if you're in Toronto or Tel Aviv, if you're in Tustin or in New York. We're one people. The last thing that caught my attention is something I really love dearly. It's Birkata Kohanim, the priestly blessing. I say the priestly blessing every morning, early in the morning when I finish meditation. I say it every time I stand for Amidah here or at home, even if I do it by myself and there's no repetition. Every time Shelley blesses the Shabbat candle, at the end of it, I say for all of our loved one, present and not, and then I recite the priestly blessing. The priestly blessing, the rite of the priestly blessing, was conducted at the temple, first and second temple in Jerusalem, for about 1,000 years. In Orthodox synagogue today, they do it every morning. In the modern Orthodox in which I grew up, it is done every Saturday morning during the repetition of the Amidah. Hal recited it during the repetition. Here at CBI, we do Birkata Kohanim. I have seen it done before on Yom Kippur. The Reform and the Reconstructionist movement are not doing it anymore. But I think you'll be interested in hearing that the Lutherans use the priestly blessing in a slightly different format during the benediction. So let's talk about it for a little bit. I have never seen the priestly blessing done. The only thing I have seen with my own eyes is they leave, the Cohens leave, they go wash their hands. They come onto the bima, they remove their shoes, they put the talit over their head. At that point, as a child, my dad will put a talit on my head and would tell me, "Don't look." To this day, I have never looked. So I don't really know what happens after, but I know how to read. Apparently, Leonard Nimoy of blessed memory, Mr. Spock from Star Trek, did look. I actually watched that interview. He said that he used to peek under his father's talit and watch the priestly blessing conducted. So when the executives of that Star Trek asked him to come up with a Vulcan hand salute, he came up with this, which is exactly the single hand version of what the Cohens do with two hands. The Cohens hold their hands like this on the bima. Mind you, I'm telling you from what I read, I've never seen it. They pointed toward the people, and they repeat word for word what the rabbi or the cantor is reciting, the priestly blessing. Yevarechecha Adonai. They repeat each word. It's not the priest blessing us. It's God blessing to us through the priests, through the Cohens. They are simply the conduits that deliver the blessing to us. Here's another interesting thing about, another reason why I love this priestly blessing. It's the oldest blessing in a continuous use in Judaism. In 1979, archaeologists in Jerusalem, Ketefinon, it's a hillside in Jerusalem, found graves. And in one of those graves, they found 2 silver amulets. Inside those amulets, they found tiny parchment rolled really tight. It took them 3 years to unroll it very carefully so it doesn't disintegrate. Then they carbon dated it. 2,700 years old. 2,700 years ago, somebody sat down and write on a parchment the priestly blessing, then put it into a grave. You know what's really amazing about it? It's the oldest document we have that actually contains the name of God in it, in a written format. It's the oldest document we have that actually has a portion, a tiny portion of the Torah in it. You can see it online, or if you ever go to Israel, go to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem and you can see it. So what's in that priestly blessing that I love so much? The first line is 3 words. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. Seems to me it's very clear. This blessing has to do with our physical well-being. The second line is 5 words. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. May God shine his face onto you and be gracious to you. Shining a face onto you is a Hebrew idiom. It means God show you favor. The third line is 7 words long, and it says, Isa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. May God lift up his eyes, his face toward you, and grant you peace. The first part is also a Hebrew idiom. Turning your face on toward someone in Hebrew is an idiom for being lenient toward that person. The second part is the blessing of peace. Rabbi Elliot Dorff said and wrote that the blessing of peace is the ultimate blessing. We need blessing of peace in order to experience all the other blessings. And when you think about the last 2 weeks and all disturbing images, news, and words we have seen and heard, I'd like to offer a prayer. May the God who brings peace in heaven will bring peace upon us, upon our people Israel, and anywhere, indeed maybe upon all of humanity. And let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom to you.